Summer is a fleeting thing. While it may not seem possible on a hot August morning, that thick blanket of green that surrounds you will be giving way to a white blanket of snow in just a few short weeks. I was especially aware of this, though, as I filmed these scenes around Story County, Iowa. The days were starting to grow shorter, and I found myself frustrated by my inability to take full advantage of the season. I was stuck in limbo, with no clear path going forward until late August, when things finally started to come together, and another adventure started to take shape. After weeks of sitting on the sidelines, the dog and I were going to have a chance to go out and explore everything that the summer had to offer before it got put back on the shelf for another year. Now that things were more settled, I started to plan a trip to the upper Great Plains that would cross off a couple of items on my bucket list. We would start by heading to Devil's Tower and camping nearby. We'd then head to the Bighorn National Forest before going to the Little Bighorn Battlefield the next day. After that, we might camp in one of the national grasslands or maybe spend the night in the Badlands. Regardless, it was an ambitious plan that was going to require following a tight schedule. And if you know how I operate, you know that that plan was doomed before we even left the house. Okay, well, as usual, I am a disorganized mess, and I am getting out of here much later than dark early, which, well, it's pretty much par for the course for me, I guess. But the important thing is I got this thing packed. We have a dog who is trying to figure out why there's something in his back seat, but I think he'll adjust, he'll be all right. Let's put some miles between us and central Iowa. What do you say? Obviously, the late start put us behind schedule from the get-go, so we had to make some changes to our itinerary. Instead of camping near Devil's Tower on the first night, we ended up boondocking along the banks of the Missouri River just outside of Owatonna, South Dakota. On the bright side, though, the rain that we drove through on and off since leaving central Iowa finally gave way to sunshine right before we made camp. But it did leave us with a lot of mud to deal with. I think I minded it more than Drax, though. Hey, Drax, man! What are you doing? What's up, buddy? Is this way better than being in a car all day or what, huh? Is this worth it? Is this worth it? So that's worth it. Yes, Tim, that's worth it. Mud or no mud, though, we ended up with a gem of a spot to spend the night. It's getting dark, but you can see that tonight we're having fajitas for dinner. I've got the poor man's overlanding scuttle set up. Well, this is I think my $60 scuttle, including the propane bottle underneath. The legs from the Ace Hardware in Boone, Iowa. And I think the actual cast iron kind of scuttle thing there was maybe 50 bucks off of Amazon. So the poor man's scuttle, but it works and I dig it. And I'm hungry. Well, that was fun. So as you know, I said last night it was muddy. Well, it's still pretty muddy this morning. And the dog found every bit of it and decided to jump into my driver's seat, even though he has no license. You have no license, buddy. You have no license. No, you don't. Anyway, this truck is disgusting. And it's day one of the trip. I just keep telling myself that mud is temporary, memories are forever, right? Right? I guess we'll find out. Somewhere along the way that morning, I made a decision to bypass Devil's Tower for the time being and head straight to the Bighorn National Forest in Wyoming. This would get us back on schedule to check out the Little Bighorn battlefield on Saturday, and it would also give us a chance to get on the other side of all this rain, which had followed us well into eastern Wyoming. Now, the app I used for finding camping spots told of a camping area at the end of a somewhat tricky road. You'll need all of your concentration to get up that road, but you'll be rewarded with a beautiful, peaceful lakeside camping spot when you do. Well, what's not to like about that? We found the road we were looking for, and off we went. Finally, we might get a chance to do some actual overlanding on this so-called overlanding channel. And everything was fine for about the first mile or so, until I found myself on a steep incline along the edge of a deep ravine, with a rut and boulder-filled mess of a road that I am supposed to follow ahead of me. To make things even better, I was within eyesight of a 90-degree turn just up ahead. What laid beyond that was anyone's guess. Was this the worst of it, or was it just a warm-up for things to come? In the end, I decided to back down the hill and call it a day. Could have I made it through that stretch? Probably, but I was traveling alone in a stock Tacoma. I had no cell reception and no idea how much worse this road would get. Whatever the view promised at the end of this road, it wasn't worth doing serious damage to the truck. I backed down the hill and settled for a nice camping spot about 100 yards from where I turned around. Later on, as I was setting up camp, I saw a couple of side-by-sides and a later model Ford Ranger pass by before sunset. One of the side-by-sides turned around and came back, while the other one made it up the hill with no problems. I'm pretty sure the Ranger made it up the hill, but I'm also pretty sure I saw the driver of that Ranger walking back down the road later on. The road continued to have a substantial amount of traffic all night, including a Jeep Cherokee that set up camp within eyesight of our spot around 1 a.m. All I can say is that we were just as quiet leaving that morning at 7 a.m. as they were when they arrived earlier that morning. I hope they were the early rising kind. We also encountered something we had never had on our other adventures: below freezing temperatures. I put some water in the dog dish for Drax that morning, only to find a layer of ice on it when I went to dump it out about 40 minutes later. Fortunately, we were prepared with an arsenal of sleeping bags, woobies, and blankets, and we stayed warm all night. And since we set up camp relatively early that night, I had plenty of time to fire up the ham radio and make some contacts. Yeah, we're playing a little radio here in the Bighorn National Forest. Got the FTDX10 hooked up. We got our antenna over here. Nothing too crazy. Sort of works. We got our battery and the solar panel, although we've lost our daylight for the night. Not a bad place to camp for the night, I suppose. By the way, I found out later on that our camp spot in the Bighorn National Forest was above 9,000 feet, which might explain why I got so cold that night, and why I was sucking so much wind. In spite of the altitude, the traffic, and the cold, though, I'd love to visit this place again. Like a lot of the West, the word beautiful just doesn't seem to do this place justice. Even though we were traveling east into the rising sun, I couldn't resist turning on the GoPro and catching some of that beauty as we headed off towards the Little Bighorn battlefield. Now, I am fortunate to have spent a fair amount of time at some of the Civil War battlefields out east, namely Manassas, Gettysburg, and Antietam. and each one of them has a certain vibe about them that I can't really describe. It's a vibe that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up a little, and your stomach feels a little anxious. It's knowing that blood was spilled here by brave men on both sides while fighting for a way of life. The little Bighorn battlefield has that same vibe. That feeling of sacrifice and fear. As I walked along the path below Last Stand Hill, I could feel my stomach knot up a little. There are plenty of excellent histories on YouTube about the battle, and I will not try to add or improve to their work. Understanding the battle and what led up to it is one thing, though, but experiencing the battlefield firsthand is another. Looking down on the stones on Last Stand Hill, I cannot imagine the terror these men must have felt as they awaited their fate, or the horrible night those men spent on Reno Ridge wondering if they would be next. It's a fear that still hangs over the battlefield like a fog that no sun can burn off or wind can blow away. You know, it still amazes me that views like this are free for the taking out in the West. Why would anybody want to stay in a KOA? I mean, look at this. This is beautiful. Big sky country indeed. Look at that. Amazing. It was late afternoon by the time we finished up at Little Bighorn Battlefield. I still had hopes of reaching Devil's Tower that day, but the odds of us making it there before the visitor center closed, well, were pretty slim. Since we were passing through the Custer National Forest anyway, I decided to see if I could find a good camping spot for the night somewhere nearby. As luck would have it, we found an awesome spot to spend the night. Let me tell you, this is what it's all about. Maybe it was the decompression after the heaviness of the battlefield, but this amazing, secluded location was the perfect way to spend an evening. The dog and I relaxed, played some fetch, and ate some dinner as the sun set in the west. Why don't you give me the stick? Give me the stick! You're supposed to bring it here, you knucklehead. Yeah! Like, throw it again. You just gonna chew on the stick now? Is that what you're gonna do? Well, you know what I'm gonna do? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go over here and get another stick. Oh, no, I'm not. Okay. All right, that stick is supreme now. Oh, broke it too. Look, I got a stick. Ah! All right, all right, all right. Go get it. Whee! There he goes. You've been a good boy today, man. Don't be coughing on me. What are you doing? All right, fine. It's the unplanned finds like these that make me excited to go back out and do it all over again. And that's one of the lessons I brought home from the trip. The dog and I are at our best when we are winging it. While our original plan was good, it was overly ambitious and sort of defeats the purpose. There isn't a lot of time to explore when you're constantly trying to make it to point whatever on a map by a given time. We would definitely try to do things differently in the future. And as it turned out, the future started that next day. After a leisurely morning at camp, I decided to see where that dirt road went and make a left instead of the right needed to get back onto the highway. It dead-ended in a cattle pasture marked private property, but the scenery made it well worth the drive. Seeing Devil's Tower from a distance is a lot like seeing Agathla Peak for the first time, but with two differences. Unlike Agathla Peak, I knew Devil's Tower was coming up, so I was on the lookout for that first view, and it was breathtaking. Also, unlike Agathla Peak, though, Devil's Tower was packed to the gills. Not only were they out of parking spots at the visitor center, the restaurant right outside of the park ended up suspending service because they were out of food. Not to be deterred, I headed off to the northwest in search of a couple of sister formations known as the Missouri Buttes. Unfortunately, this footage is as close as I could get before the road was blocked off with a chain. And I won't tell you how many private driveway signs I ignored to get that far. I figured we'd better get out of there before an angry rancher showed up with his 30-30. Needless to say, I didn't get a lot of footage, but I did find something else. Prairie dogs. The park has a prairie dog town just off the main road, and I brought the longest lens I own and a seldom used teleconverter just for these guys. I am no David Attenborough, but I really enjoyed filming these guys. This woman from a car with Wisconsin plates? Well, not so much. Since she was nice enough to walk into my shot, though, I figured I would return the favor by including her in this video. Say cheese, cheesehead. And with that, it was time to start making our way back to central Iowa, and a new job that started on Tuesday. It was a whirlwind trip, but we learned a few things about how we camp and what works for us. Keep your eye open for a future video about that coming soon. Until then, Drax and I would like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do us both a solid by hitting the like button, and please consider subscribing. We're a new channel, you know, and we need all the help we can get with YouTube and its algorithms. Anything you can do to help would be appreciated. Again, thanks for watching. Follow us on Instagram at Tim and his Tacoma, and we hope to see you out on the trail soon.